Well, welcome to the 700 Club. President Trump faced a third assassination attempt in just 2 years. All of this Saturday night. The gunman opened fire outside the White House Correspondents Association dinner. His online manifesto, he referred to himself as the friendly federal assassin.
Well, the suspect also mocked the Secret Service for what he called, quote, incompetence. Meanwhile, the level of security at the event is being questioned. Dale Hurd reports.
31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen of Torrance, California, described himself in his LinkedIn profile as a mechanical engineer, computer scientist, computer game developer, and teacher who once interned at NASA and was named Teacher of the Month. In his manifesto released before the attack, Allen called himself the friendly federal assassin. In this AI-enhanced video, Allen can be seen running past Secret Service agents toward the ballroom, where President Trump, administration officials, and thousands of guests were gathered. Armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and knives, Allen was tackled and arrested after opening fire, striking a Secret Service agent wearing a bulletproof vest. President Trump described to 60 Minutes how the chaos unfolded.
We heard a big bang, and it was either a gunshot or it was a tray of dishes, which happens a lot in ballrooms. And I was hoping it was a tray, but it wasn't.
The president, first lady, and guests were unharmed. Allen had checked into the hotel as a guest before the event, bringing his weapons with him. The Wall Street Journal reports that Allen, while a student at Caltech, was active in the Christian fellowship there. Allen reportedly attended services at churches in Pasadena and Torrance. In his 1,000-word manifesto, Allen writes, "Turning the other cheek when someone else is oppressed is not Christian behavior. It is complicity with the oppressor's crimes. I experience rage thinking about everything this administration has done." Allen also mocked what he believed was lax security at the dinner, writing in his manifesto, "What is the Secret Service doing? No security, not in transport, not in the hotel, not in the event. This level of incompetence is insane."
Being a hotel allowed people to enter the location without their bags being searched and without being vetted. So these are the types of locations that are really challenging.
It's impossible for the agency to take over the entire hotel and close it down, or some people have suggested shut off the main lobby and screen everybody coming in.
The Secret Service is facing questions after this third assassination attempt against President Trump. He's calling on all Americans to recommit to resolving their differences peaceably. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, CBN News senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright joins us now. So, Kelly, let's start with security. The president, vice president, speaker of the House, all in the same room at the same time, and then you had top cabinet members. There's reports this event did not have top security status. Did the Secret Service fall short here?
Yeah, Gordon, basically what's going on right now, Kash Patel, the FBI director, just spoke momentarily, just a few moments ago, to Fox News, and he talked about the fact that they're investigating everything. The Secret Service Saturday night said that they did a good job, that they were able to exercise their security measures and put it in place to stop the shooter from getting inside the ballroom. But the questions now are what is going on at the top level of this Secret Service, as well as all security there at the hotel. Were they fully understanding that anything could happen, and were they prepared for everything? And that's the question that now remains. So the investigation continues in terms of finding out how they can do better, be better, and protect the president from any future assassination attempts, especially when you look at what happened Saturday night when the succession of power was all within the room. Unfortunately, we're here today talking in the positive that the president is alive, all the succession of power is alive, and people are safe and well, except for the one security Secret Service agent who was shot in the chest. His bulletproof vest and his phone actually prevented him from having any injuries that would cause life or death.
Does this point out that perhaps we shouldn't have gatherings with the president, vice president, and speaker of the House? That should just, there should be if you're in the line of succession, you shouldn't be in the same room at the same time?
Well, look, your question is very solid, and it reminds me of what happened in Iran when the entire line of succession gathered at a meeting, and Israel and the United States took all of that out, 48, 49 leaders. You look at what's happening here in America, were we too lax in understanding that the entire succession of power was right there within the room, the ballroom? I've attended these events before, as you have, and I can't recall the Vice President and the President of the United States, as well as the Speaker of the House, being in the same room together at a hotel event, at a ballroom. There's usually one leader who's somewhere in case something like this should happen and it goes the wrong way. So those questions will be asked as well. The president, of course, is stating that we should be able to do that. But this is a different time, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. In fact, I haven't in all my time of going to the White House Correspondents Association dinner. I was not at the one that took place this Saturday, but I was totally surprised as I watched it live on television and saw what unfolded.
Have we gotten into a sense of complacency that somehow or other we're untouchable? You know, I've been to the dinner. I've been in that ballroom. Is that part of the problem, that we think we're untouchable?
I think the president talked about that. He talked about the rhetoric that's going on between Republicans and Democrats. And he says we have to get to a level that we can actually be able to reason together. But when you look at the ballroom situation, he talked about that he wants to establish a ballroom that's more secure. He does not want to stop having events. The outdoor events is problematic for Secret Service, as you know, in terms of what happened at Butler with him playing on the golf course, at his own golf course. And then this event, this took place, and this has never happened. And outside of that hotel, many years ago, you'll recall that President Ronald Reagan was shot just outside of the hotel. So this is something that the president has to think about, the security has to think about. What do we do next? Because he does want to do this in 30 days. So all hands are on deck in terms of making sure that that event is planned well. The other question that's coming, Gordon, is what responsibilities does the White House Correspondents Association have in terms of actually adding to the security? That's a question that's being asked of us.
Oh, I remember the assassination attempt against Reagan very well. I was actually an intern at the CBN News Bureau in the basement of the National Press Club when that hit. And suddenly it was, okay, this is the biggest story. And it was one of the first stories I ever covered. In that event, it was blamed on, well, you have to exit the hotel on a public sidewalk. Everything was open and everything was known to everyone, including Hinckley. So in this gunman's proclamations prior to the event, he was openly complaining about the lax security, that here it is, it's announced the president's going to be there. You have a room full of leaders of the free world all together, and he's saying, there's no security here at all. I was able to bring in all kinds of weapons into this hotel, and nobody stopped me. Nobody did anything to me. So, again, is this just complacency on our part that somehow we think in Washington, D.C., we're going to be safe?
I think you're right. We took it for granted. When I say we, I mean the Secret Service, law enforcement involved. I don't know what they were actually thinking about, but they're thinking, oh, it's the members of the White House press corps. Everything's going to be fine. Maybe they took that kind of approach and perhaps took a laissez-faire attitude towards it. I mean, they had all the security checks there. And again, they would tell you that it was successful. Interim Attorney General Todd Blanche would tell you that it was successful, but they're also talking about, keep this in mind, funding for DHS. 70 plus days now, and Secret Service has not received the funding that it needs. There are a lot of people in the background have not been there to help them. Could that have something to do with it? That remains a debate in Congress. Complacency in this country, wherever the president goes, there should never be a complacent attitude. There should be one of prime security concerns, especially when you have the White House correspondents who cover the president wherever he goes. And so this is something that they have to talk about, and they'll talk about at the highest levels. The president continues to heap praise upon law enforcement, as he should. They did go move in, save his life as well as the lives of others. Who knows what would have happened had this lone gunman made entry into that ballroom. And as you noted and saw, there were plenty of reporters there, but they were all under the tables. And the people who were standing, in fact, Judge Janine Pirro, the D.C. U.S. Attorney, stated that she was under the table. She happened to peek up and saw law enforcement doing their jobs, running to help save the president and his cabinet members.
Does this now underline that we need to get funding for DHS? We need to get funding for the ballroom. We need to stop the objections, the lawsuits, all of the hindrances. It seems like now more than ever we need to keep our leadership safe. Any assassination right now in this political climate is pouring gasoline on a fire. So shouldn't there just be a bipartisan effort now? Let's get this done. Above all, we need to keep our leadership safe.
Well, you're absolutely right. The fight, however, is between the Democrats and the Republicans still to this day. The Democrats will tell you, well, everything is passed. Homeland Security is all funded, with the exception of ICE. And therein lies the rub, because the Democrats are actually stating that they will not fund anything else if ICE is still involved. At some point, they've got to realize that ICE has an important role to play as well in terms of not just deportations, but also as well as our security along the border, which is now down to 0 people coming across the border. That's important as part of our national security as well. Senator John Fetterman says, pass the ballroom, build it. It's important to have it. This should have proven that. And he also supports the Republicans in terms of getting this measure passed through the House to fund all of DHS, including ICE.
Well, Kelly Wright, thanks for the insight. Thanks so much for joining with us. Well, in other news, President Trump pulled the plug on the weekend peace negotiations with Iran. Ephraim Graham has that story and more from the CBN newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, the talks between Washington and Tehran are on hold again, even as Iran puts forward a new proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Middle East correspondent Joshua Swanson is following this story.
President Donald Trump called off plans to send U.S. envoys to Pakistan for talks with Iran as negotiations break down. Speaking on Fox News, Trump underscored America's position.
Well, we have all the cards. If they want to talk, they can come to us or they can call us.
Today, Iran floated a new proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and end the conflict. U.S. officials rejected the plan, saying it could weaken Washington's leverage, particularly efforts to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions. The administration signaled it intends to maintain the naval blockade, pressuring Iran's oil exports. Iran's president is demanding Washington lift the blockade before negotiations can resume, calling it a clear breach of the ceasefire understandings. Meanwhile, in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he was shocked by the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump, condemning political violence and expressing gratitude that the president and First Lady were unharmed. Turning to the north, Netanyahu reaffirmed his government's determination to confront Hezbollah. At the same time, former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid announced a new political alliance.
This evening, we are uniting and establishing the Together Party under my leadership.
This alliance comes after their 2021 coalition ended a decade of rule by Netanyahu. Now their renewed partnership aims to challenge Netanyahu's leadership in the elections expected later this year. Joshua Swanson, CBN News, Jerusalem.
The CBN family is mourning the passing of Nedra Talley Ross today. Nedra was married to CBN reporter and host Scott Ross, who died in 2023. She's remembered as one of the founding members of the Ronettes, the 1960s girl group famous for the hit Be My Baby. The group was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2007. Nedra appeared on the 700 Club with her husband Scott and founder Pat Robertson over the years. Living in the South as an interracial couple, Scott and Nedra faced many challenges, but she said those experiences only brought them closer together. She also cited prayer as the foundation of their marriage. Nedra died Sunday morning, her daughter releasing this statement. At approximately 8:30 this morning, our mother, Nedra Talley Ross, went home to be with the Lord. She was safe in her own bed at home with her family close, knowing she was loved. Thank you, Lord. Our prayers for the family. She will certainly be missed. Gordon?
She will certainly be missed, and she's being mourned by my family. I want you to get the picture. We called them Uncle Scott and Aunt Nedra, except with Nedra, she was way too cool to be called an aunt. Here she is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a member of the Ronettes, hit songs. So let's get the picture here. Here's Scott Ross, one of the top radio DJs in New York City. He introduced the Beatles at Shea Stadium at that concert. He was friends with Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones. He had that, you know, by the world standard, incredible success. And here's Nedra, a member of the Ronettes in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She tours England with Jimi Hendrix and the Rolling Stones and friends with the Beatles. All of this happening. And then they get radically saved. And back in 1968, they come to a little tiny UHF station in Portsmouth, Virginia. Scott was sent on sort of an advanced trip to scout it out. And in those innocent days, we couldn't afford hotel rooms for Scott. So Scott bunked in with me. And then Dad made everybody work. And so he had to go to the stable with me in the morning and, you know, this shovel's for you. He liked to joke later on, well, his job at CBN really hadn't changed from that first introduction. So this is the picture of all this success. And they come to Portsmouth, Virginia as an interracial couple. Just a decade before, in Virginia, that was illegal. And so to put up with that kind of discrimination, that kind of questions, you know, what happens to you, you know, integration and massive resistance were all the topics of the day. But they wanted to hold forth and say, we want to be a shining light. And I'm very proud of my father. He absolutely encouraged that. Let's show the world what it's like to be Christian, that there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male or female, but we're all one in Christ. And he encouraged them through the years. Scott worked for CBN, then he went to work with Derek Prince, and then he came back to CBN. Remarkably successful career. Nedra all along the way, and they were part of our family. So we miss them. And it was a day of mourning for my family yesterday. We'll continue in that. Her memory will live on. They had impact not just here in the United States. They were instrumental in the forming of CBN Asia in the Philippines 30 years ago. We're part of CBN India the same time period. It's amazing the impact that they had, not just here in America, but on the entire world. And they left what the world called success to pursue what God had for them. They left it all, and they lived for Him. And they're going to hear a wonderful welcoming, and I hope they're playing Be My Baby in Heaven today. That would be a wonderful tribute to what Nedra did.